Hey there, welcome to another installment of Strange Planet, and it's a far stranger planet than any of us can possibly comprehend. If you'd like to get a little deeper into this podcast, you may want to consider becoming a premium subscriber. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, plus special bonus episodes. And on this episode, what if the ancients weren't primitive stonemasons, but master engineers tapping into forces we've only begun to rediscover? My guest tonight, Christopher Dunn, has spent decades dismantling the orthodox narrative of Egypt. An engineer by trade and author by passion, Christopher argues the Great Pyramid wasn't a tomb at all, but a machine built with surgical precision, capable of generating power, resonating like a colossal instrument, and perhaps even predicting earthquakes. From Tesla's shadow hanging over Giza to the mysterious underground structures recently detected beneath the plateau, Christopher's work suggests we're on the brink of uncovering not just Egypt's true past, but humanity's possible future, a world powered by clean, limitless energy. His groundbreaking books include The Giza Power Plant, Technologies of Ancient Egypt, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, and his latest, Giza, the Tesla Connection, Acoustical Science, and the Harvesting of Clean Energy. Christopher, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Richard. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So let's begin by, let's say, shattering the tomb myth once again. You've said the Great Pyramid is not a tomb, but a machine. For centuries, we've been told it was just a monument to a dead pharaoh. If that's a lie, then the entire story, really, of ancient Egypt collapses. So let me ask you straight. What was the Great Pyramid really built to do?
It certainly wasn't a tomb, and I think more and more people are beginning to recognize that, particularly the Egyptians. They are now tuning into the whole concept of the Great Pyramid being something else. And my work has seemed to be resonating with them too. When I wrote my second book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, I appealed to engineers to follow my path and examine the artifacts themselves. And an Egyptian engineer by the name of Ahmed Adli actually took me up on that challenge and went out and started to verify what I had written, which is basically identifying artifacts out in the field that have been crafted to a high order of precision and complexity, such as the boxes in the Serapeum. These are 70-ton solid granite and basalt boxes. They're huge, and they are crafted to a precision that you normally reserve for a manufacturing company that is involved in creating artifacts within 1 to 10,000ths of an inch. And generally, when you design a product with that kind of tolerance attached to it, you are creating a product that has a function, that the surfaces that you are crafting to that tolerance have to be that precise for a technical purpose. So if you look at an automobile, the internal combustion engine, you'll find tolerances in the cylinders and the pistons within that are like 2,000ths of an inch. And also many other products. I've been involved in aerospace for 52 years, and the aerospace products have to be extremely precise, obviously, because the public safety issues are significant, and any reduction in quality can be fatal. So that kind of manufacturing tolerance today, when you actually find it in Egypt, it's a bit of a shock. So you're going through Egypt and you say, "Wait a minute, that looks like it's been machined." I should measure it to see if it actually has been machined. And then when you go back with some instruments to actually check it out, it's an eye opener. It's a shocking,
Right.
eye opener.
Right. I mean, if it were built to be a tomb, it would have to look nice. It would have to be the edifice would have to be very, well put together, but it would be form over function. If it's
Right.
machined to that level, obviously, as you say, it has a specific function. So, I mean, if it seems some of them are coming around, maybe, but I'm talking about sort of orthodox Egyptologists. But most of them are clinging to this narrative. Are they covering it up, or are they just blind to the evidence?
I'm not. I wouldn't say that they're covering anything up. I would say that they're kind of in their their own bubble, right? In academia, and they have their hierarchy, their accepted hierarchy, and also their uh, inventory of peer-reviewed and accepted books on the different subjects in Egyptology. So, and so, just like a lot of it's kind of human nature, when somebody comes out from outside your field and starts telling you you're doing something wrong, your immediate response is one of rejection, or they would put you down, call you a pseudo archaeologist, a pseudo scientist, any name that they can throw at you, they do, and they have. And so, but I think they actually believe the story. But we have to, and most people in the world believe the story. Uh, Many people, there seems to be a growing number of people who are now rejecting it. But when you consider the origins of this story, we go back to, uh, when Egyptology was in its infancy, and that was it. In England, there was William Flinders Petrie, who was considered to be the world's first English Egyptologist or British Egyptologist, and he did his work in the late 1880s. And so, when you consider the timeline of development, of civilization, human development on the planet, uh, you go from the Egyptians at the lowest of the rung of the ladder, then you've got your Greeks and your Romans, and then the Europeans, uh, Germany, France, England, Spain. Uh, in terms of industrial development and the development of machine tools, the Industrial Revolution was around 1875. And the improvements in mechanical machines to perform work uh, exploded at that time. So I think the mores of the opinions of people, the cultural biases and their chauvinism. Some might say it's racism, but I think it was kind of normal to the surface, to use a term where um, you're born into that culture, you're born into that environment, and so you adopt the ideas and the opinions and the attitudes of those people who you are associating with on a daily basis. And so when you go back and you read some of these works that are, the Egyptology is founded on, uh, and their reference to the Egyptians, when you're reading it, you can see that there is definitely a superior kind of attitude towards the current Egyptians. Now, what they've done, though, is that they have basically uh, set everything that is in Egypt in terms of its artifacts uh, to the timeline of the pre-dynastic or the dynastic Egyptians, and the archaeological record contains primitive tools. And so they put the two together and say, all of this wonder that we see here, the pyramids, the temples, the statues, it was all done with the tools that we found in the archaeological record. So they wouldn't accept the idea that the Egyptians were using machines, or the Great Pyramid itself was a machine. It was all a kind of putting the Egyptians in the timeline of human development to the lowest point. I see though that the history of the human race on the planet is more cyclical, and if we go even further back than the pre-dynastic Egyptians, there's lots of evidence to show that there were cataclysms, whether it was a super volcano 75,000 years ago, or meteor strikes, uh, coronal discharge events, and things like that. Uh, they're all potentially planet killers, and if we just take the Toba event, there was it was like an extinction event in a way. It left only about 5,000 people on the earth, and in their DNA, there was a professor at the University of Illinois. I think his name was Ambrose, and he had done a study of the selections of DNA that existed after this Toba event, and the variety in the DNA was a lot less than what it would have been beforehand. But so the whole world population shrunk, and then after the survivors moved on and continued surviving, the variety in the DNA began to diversify. So
Yeah.
there's evidence like that make you think, well, perhaps there was a more advanced civilization in the past, and these artifacts are out of place. They were adopted by the ancient Egyptians, and it's not a it's not an outrageous proposition. And even I know Egyptians who are considering that, because there's another part to this whole thing, and that is the Egyptian history that is taught in the West was actually written by Westerners for the most part, and and Egyptologists, like people who are the most recognized Egyptologists, like Zahi, they were trained in Western universities. So there you have a strong influence, a Western influence in the interpretation of data in Egypt. But before Westerners came along, Egypt had their own history. It was more of an oral history. But even some of the writings describe a previous time and a previous culture, and there is their history may go back 75,000 years or 72,000 years. Who knows? I mean, but I think it makes sense. We have to consider that even if our civilization were to screech to a halt, right, because of some kind of cataclysm, some planetary disaster, what would happen to all our goods, all our technology? We run out of gas, we run out of oil, we run out of everything. We run out of people, actually, because most of them are gone. They're just barely surviving.
Right.
And there's no hope to recover. There's no way that you could actually go back to the state that you were in prior to the event. Because, right now we live with a technology that is created by specialists, and those specialists existed in different parts of the world. Even the materials exist in different parts of the world. So, if the supply chain is disrupted, then you can't make those products anymore.
It would be like in 5,000 years, let's say we had a cataclysmic event, a meteor strike or what have you, or an EMP. And
Right.
in 5,000 years from now, archaeologists will be looking at our data centers perhaps, and surmising that they were, tombs to our presidents or our kings or so forth. It'd be sort of the same type of situation, I guess. But how? I mean, you mentioned Torba, that this was the volcanic eruption. Was it on Java? That practically
Yeah, I
wiped
believe
out.
so.
Yeah. So are you suggesting it's quite likely then and that was 75,000 years ago, the pyramids predate the Torba event? So we're looking at on the order of 75, 80, 90,000 years ago, these pyramids were built?
Um, there are some people who state that. I've always kind of had the position where these are engineered products, and as far as my lane, which I try to stay in my lane as an engineer. I'm focused on the engineering, so it's how they were created and what were they created for. Those are the two subjects that I actually deal with, and but it's when people are interested, obviously. Okay, so when were they done? Where are the machines? Where they built these? Where are the tools that you say uh, needed to have been present in creating these? And they don't exist. Now they haven't been found yet. Whether they ever will, I don't know. But that is a question in a lot of people's minds. And so, it is a mystery. There is still a lot that we don't know. But in terms of what we do know is that what lies above the ground and below the ground in Egypt could not have been created by the dynastic Egyptians.
So again, we're talking about cutting stone with tolerances tighter than a human hair. Um,
Yes.
what kind of machinery would be required to cut massive stones with that kind of a tolerance?
Well, there is analyzing tool marks and geometries on some of the stone, as I describe in my book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. There's clear evidence that they had very efficient saws, circular saws, and some of them are over 30, 32 feet in diameter. That's a very, very large saw. But based on the radius that they leave, yeah, they imprint in the stone. That is what I measured and calculated the diameter of the saw to be. Um, I know that left me speechless, and I pondered. It kept me awake at night, but I was actually thinking about it. So that is an interesting one. Then there's this recent work on the pre-dynastic vases. These are hard igneous rock vases like granite, diorite, and basalt. The vases are cut to within a precision of like 2,000ths of an inch, and some of them are not quite as close, but certainly within the range of uh, a fairly decent machine, like a lathe or something like that, that would create most of them. Now, but it wouldn't be a simple lathe just to cut the diameters. They would have to adapt it to be able to leave material in certain places so that they could cut the lugs. They have two lugs diametrically opposite each other on the bases. But those are amazing. I've often, I've been to Egypt about 14 times now. I plan on going back next March with the Filippo Biondi and his team, the SAR scanning team, and that should be a wonderful trip. It's organized by Mohammed Ibrahim, but the just the technology that's involved, uh, going through let me go back up, going through like the Cairo Museum and other museums in Egypt, you'll see these pre-dynastic vases behind glass, and I've often looked at them and said, wow, they look like they've been machined. I wonder if they have. And but I've never been able to grab one and put measure it or anything like that. So lately, I think it was like 2018 and after, um, my son Alex got involved with uh, a financier after meeting him on a tour, and he had one of those pre-dynastic vases in his collection. He had a few of them in a collection, and so Alex offered to inspect it at the company that he was working at. He's a quality engineer, and which he did. And I was present, and they put it up on the rotary table, uh, put a dial indicator on the outside diameter and inside the bore, and I observed, and it was within 2,000ths of an inch. So that was definitely machined. There's no way you could hold those tolerances just by eye and using a stone to beat it into submission.
You mentioned 32-foot diameter circular saws. I can't even imagine that. But, I mean, how would you power something like that? Not only the size of this saw, but the RPMs required to cut through, granite or, I mean, what kind of energy input would you require?
Well, one thing, it's not necessarily about rotational speed on a saw,
Hmm.
uh, or even a grinding wheel. It's the surface feet per minute, cutting the material. That's the most important thing. So, if you got a saw that's 32 feet in diameter, its rotational speed, RPM, is going to be fairly low,
Ah,
but the surface feet per minute, because of its diameter, is going to be high, and it will still cut very efficiently. And also, it will be beneficial because the worst enemy of a tool is heat.
mhm.
And so, if you've got a segment on on a cutting disc, and it enters the material, it grinds, it's building up heat. But on a saw that is 32 feet in diameter, that particular segment, it gets through the material, and it has a time to cool down before it comes around again and does its job again. So it has an opportunity to cool. It's not like it's continuously grinding away, building up heat until it fails. Um, yeah, when I noted that, I was blown away. But the other thing that was interesting, in the same area that I was uh, observing this piece of granite, a granite slab, uh, over in the distance there was a, like a slot in the limestone bedrock where the lower half of the saw would have been kept, right? So it would have been mounted like a table saw with the bulk of it underground, and most of it up above. So those slots are generally described as being boat pits, and you find them at Aberwash, you find them at Giza, all over the place. There's several at Giza, big ones. Uh, and definitely, I in my book I actually show photographs of them. I have a drawing of the saw that would fit in it, and uh, and you find them near the Great Pyramid. You find them near the Khafre's Pyramid, and I'm sure that there are more at other locations around the plateau, except they're probably filled with sand.
And what would these saws have been made of, likely?
Um, the material. One of the things that a lot of people uh, seem to think is that the pyramid builders did not have very strong materials. Like the only metals that they had was copper, and basically they had to rely on copper and wood to perform their work, like drilling or sawing and things of that nature. I have a different perspective on it because looking at the sophistication of their products that they make, I imagine a society that would be definitely able to mine and smelt and produce iron, or maybe even steel. We don't know, to what level their material science was developed, but generally, when you look at one particular branch of engineering or science, like the engineering of uh, the pyramid or the the pre-dynastic bowls that have very sophisticated geometries uh, crafted into them. It's like they were definitely very sophisticated, and I would say that number one, they definitely had the materials, which if you were building a saw that large, you would probably use a metal, a steel, or maybe they had, even an even more advanced kind of materials that they were working with. That won't surprise me. Um, and then, of course, you were talking about the powering these uh,
Hmm.
these saws. Uh, the generally we're locked into a vision of the Egyptians being kind of primitive, and so we see that, oh well, maybe they had like a captain, or that they had a donkey who was turning a capstan, and that in turn was turning the wheel, and it's everything is like you got all this sophistication over here, but as far as building it, you're reverting back to the vision of the ancient Egyptians being primitive. So there is a real dichotomy there that is like I don't see it. My vision is that that sophistication was evident throughout the entire society.
You described the pyramid as a kind of a giant instrument that would
Hmm.
resonate. What
Hmm.
would it be designed to play? Vibration, frequency, energy?
Well, they're all related: vibration, frequency, and energy. So that is energy. Vibration's energy. Resonance is the relationship between one particular item with another. So if you have like a musical instrument, you have all of that. Um, Great Pyramid, I would describe as something like a huge musical instrument. It'd be like a violin, where you have the deep structures that have currently been discovered under the pyramids, these well shafts going down 2,000 feet into the bedrock, penetrating through the limestone and then into the igneous layers, uh, and 30 feet in diameter. Those are those are what I describe as organ pipes. And if you use that analogy like an organ pipe, so you have the earth is the bow, and that's applying energy to these strings, the organ pipes of the strings, those deep shafts of the strings. And then inside the we're talking about the Great Pyramid now. You have the soundboard, and then finally the King's Chamber is the resonating box. So that's where that's where all the magic happens in the King's Chamber, where energy gathers, is collected, and then converted to electromagnetic energy and then distributed to the population. So the Tesla connection is basically introducing the idea of Tesla's idea of wireless distribution of energy. So that's the Tesla connection. And the other part of the Tesla connection is a device that is mounted in the subterranean chamber where you have it imparts pulses of vibration into the pyramid to keep things shook up in the pyramid and also connect with the earth itself. So it becomes what you call a coupled oscillator, where it vibrates in sympathy with the earth, and it draws energy from the earth and then converts that energy into electromagnetic energy. And all the evidence is stacking up to prove that. Even the electrical nature of the pyramids in terms of phenomena that has been noted over the years, and the recent discovery by some Russian researchers that the Great Pyramid has the ability to focus electromagnetic energy towards the King's Chamber, the center of the pyramid. So all of this is kind of strengthening the idea that the Great Pyramid was what I call an electron harvester, but it's a solid state electron harvester.
Solid state. Interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just remembering a very recent conversation I had with Captain Leo Walton about the use of water, a massive water a pump, funneling water into the chambers, and just by the action of the water smashing against these rocks at extreme pressure and causing kind of a dissociation of the hydrogen and oxygen molecules, creating like a hydroxy or a hydrogen gas, and then a plasma and so forth. So you're saying, based on your theory, no water involved here. It's you called it a solid state energy.
Solid state in that there are no moving parts. Actually, there may be one moving part in the subchamber, but the rest of inside the Great Pyramid, the areas that were basically set up, tuned, closed off, and left to operate, to function, without any maintenance or any adjustment of anything. They just operated. So, I know Leo Walton is a very, very nice guy, very smart guy, and the water. The idea of water creating a pulse or pounding on rock was introduced by John Cadman, who is actually a marine engineer, and he had built a model of the subchamber and described it as a hydraulic pulse generator, which he was able to describe it as a pulse generator, and it functioned. I actually took him up on an offer to come out and witness it, and I did witness it, and I was very impressed. He did a fabulous job. But one of the things that his model depended on, and I'm not sure if he has refined it since, but was that there would be a flow of water. That water would actually flow out of the chamber, out of the subchamber, and down to an area around the Sphinx where there would be a wastegate. And it's the wastegate. In his model, it has a flapper valve. It could have a spring valve, but it's the opening and closing of the valve that causes the back pressure into that back pressure forces back into the pyramid and causes a thumping of the chamber walls and ceiling. So, um, but in 2018, a friend of mine on tour, he went down the passageway, crawled down the passageway where the water was supposed to exit, and he didn't find any exit from it. Also, he didn't see where there was any part of that had been blocked off, or anything like that. So it was that didn't really support John's idea. The other possible area where it may have been exiting would be a central well in the room, and the Howard Vyse, Colonel Howard Vyse, who was an explorer, was digging into the Great Pyramid sometimes he was using dynamite, but he reported actually going down into that well in the subterranean chamber, and he was looking further into it, actually dug out a lot of the bedrock to see if he would find something. And he didn't, so there was no exit evident there. So in my book, The Tesla Connection, I said that it seems that any vibrations that were being created inside the subchamber were local to that particular pyramid, and that perhaps because of reports of a lot of tunnels and shafts that are existing around on the Giza Plateau, that perhaps the Big Daddy, I call it the Big Daddy of pulse generators, colloquially, the Big Daddy was located deep under the Giza Plateau, and it functioned to serve all the pyramids on the plateau, not just the Great Pyramid. But what we haven't talked about yet is the other technology, the physics behind it.
Yeah.
And that is the work of Friedemann Freund. Friedemann Freund is a NASA physicist, and he was doing research on earthquake lights. I don't think he had any interest in the pyramids at all, could care less. But he was trying to determine if he could develop an early warning system for earthquakes, because earthquake lights were a precursor to the earthquakes going up. And so he was chasing down the physics behind that. What happens when these plates actually come together and press together before they slip? And that pressure, he determined that within the lattice of the minerals in igneous rock, are these peroxide defects, and when they're disturbed or when pressure is applied to them, they emit these positive charge carriers. They call them p-holes. They shoot to the surface of the earth, and then they ionize the air in the locale where they exit, and those show up as earthquake lights. So those kind of phenomena have been known for a long time. I mean, during any strong earthquake, there's always generally a light show that accompanies them. And I think there's a place in Texas, Marfa, Texas, that is extremely active in terms of earthquake light setting. So you have a source for electrons. And Freud described it. He said that the lithosphere, the igneous rock under the sedimentary layer, when put under stress, becomes a battery. It turns into a battery. And so I boldly come forward, and I actually met with Friedemann, and I said, well, what if we do that? Stimulate the that rock, you know, and just collect the electrons, control the electrons, and use them. And his eyes got really wide, you know. So, and so that's basically what I propose in my book. And you know, people who want to understand his research a little more, he did write, or he did have an appendix in my book on her. It was actually the transcripts of a lecture that he gave in Christchurch, New Zealand. It was a TEDx talk. So if people want to go to YouTube and search for Freedom and Freud, Christchurch, TEDx, they'll come across his lecture. Brilliant lecture, very understandable. He presents it in layman's terms, and much more accessible and understandable than a lot of his scientific papers that appear in the peer-reviewed journals. So I think that could be the answer to our energy future, and doing a deep dive on the costs associated with drawing energy from the earth, just we're directly over the electrons, as opposed to our current model, which is part of it, which is fossil fuels. And we have, the extraction of coal, gas, oil, biomass, and, these other methods of nuclear, but they all rely on boiling water. They all rely on turning that fuel into heat. To boil water, create steam, and blow these turbines, rotate, and then we collect the electrons off the generators at the end of that process. And it's like, okay, so let's talk to Mother Earth and say, hey, if we stop burning all your stuff, how about just giving us the electrons?
Yeah, cut out the middleman. Go right to the source.
Cut out the middleman.
So again, just if I could get you to explain this like you're talking to a fifth grader, which essentially you are. the electrons coming from the tectonic action underneath the ground. The pyramids are collecting these electrons. Then how are these electrons being, or were they utilized? I mean, how were they then delivering this power? How is it being utilized?
Yeah, so the general idea of the Tesla connection comes in then. Mm-hmm. And, in my book, I have an illustration of the pyramid, but it has like a geodesic dome around it, which is similar to the Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, mm-hmm. where he was feeding electricity into that lattice work in the tower to radiate out into the atmosphere. And so basically it's analogous with that. Actually, you distribute it into the atmosphere at a distance and collecting it. Within what range, I don't know. But there's also the facility in the King's Chamber to convert to energize the hydrogen such that you can actually create a hydrogen maser. So I propose that they created a hydrogen maser in the King's Chamber. The evidence to support that is there. And so, as far as developing a distribution system, there are many ways you could do it. You could have, some people describe the pyramid as having a beam coming out of the top of it. And then, this whole kind of Wardenclyffe Tower structure that is collecting it not just from the interior and shooting it out the top, but also peripherally around the entire. You could have connection points where these where these electrons will bleed into the structure, the entire structure from other parts of the pyramid. Because after all, you've got a structure that covers 13 acres, and if you're collecting electrons from different points, to from not only the center, the core masonry, but also the casing stones, then you're gonna have a very efficient machine.
And so people keep talking about where are the capstones? Where are the missing capstones? No, there are no capstones. The energy is coming right out of the top of the pyramid.
It could come out of the top, it could come out of the side too. Yeah,
Right.
for
And
sure.
then delivered to whom and for what purpose?
Well, can you imagine a future where you have flying vehicles, right? Maybe something similar to what those UAPs that we see flying around the air,
Mhm.
the atmosphere, performing aerial feats that we could only dream of, uh, and but they need power. So how do you transmit power to them? How do they collect that energy? And so just hover above a pyramid for a while and just suck it up, and then on your way, right? and and then you get a bill in the mail from Elon Musk saying you've used this much energy. Everything will be measured, and everything will be there's no such thing as free energy, right? It may be there are free electrons. They're all over. We're surrounded with them, but actually capturing them and using them, that's not free. That's going to cost.
True. I mean, wasn't that sort of the theory as to why, was it J.P. Morgan pulled the funding for Wyden Cliff, is because they realized you couldn't meter this this energy, and therefore it would be free, basically.
Yes, I've heard that, and it's and that may be true. I don't know, but yeah, did they have the technology back then to be able to do that?
Hmm.
Probably not. Probably not. They they were they had to have some payback or some return on their investment for by investing in the development of a delivery system.
Right.
And so here comes Tesla, and he says, "Oh, I'm just going to do an end run around you. You're not going to get your money back because I'm going to distribute it for free."
It has always
Yeah.
confounded me how, you look at the pace of change and Moore's law and so forth, and yet we are essentially still producing and generating electricity, distributing electricity the same way we have for over 100 years.
That's right. That's right. But even when you talk about the amount of stone that it would take to build a pyramid, or the amount of stone you would have to excavate to create these huge shafts and going down 2,000 feet into the earth, it's kind of like we don't know how to excavate rock. In 2023, they quarried enough rock, they call it coal, to burn in power plants, but the weight of the coal would equal the weight of 76 Great Pyramids. So just in the U.S., the amount of coal that they quarried to burn in their power plants exceeded the Great Pyramid by 76 times. That's mind blowing when you consider it. And so the argument is, well, you only have to quarry this rock once, uh, and do it very carefully, and build it with precision. But you only have to do it once, and then once you built it, all your costs are going to be up front, but your ROI, that investment, the capital expenditure, that's going to bleed off very, very quickly. So there's definitely financial incentives associated with at least, doing a more serious study. I am just a bell ringer, you know, with ideas. Same as Leo. Hey, I've looked at it this way. Maybe we should look at it this way. I'd say, well, maybe we should look at. We're brainstorming, right?
Right.
I don't think anybody has all the answers, but I think we have to be open and honest and do something. Um, there's too many people want to protect their turf, I think, and so there is a resistance to the ideas.
Just getting back to Tesla for a moment. So, did he rediscover what the pyramid builders knew, or is there any evidence that Tesla was studying the pyramids? Did he go to Egypt? What do we know?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I've asked that question myself, and I've asked it of Tesla enthusiasts, people who know more about his life and his writings than I do. And there's no original source that we can go back uh, to say that Tesla had any interest in the pyramids at all, even though there's a lot of videos and reels going around about Tesla being inspired by the pyramids and in his work. There's no original source that he was even writing about it or talking about it. So that's a myth buster.
So, just get back to SAR for a moment. The synthetic aperture radar, which revealed these deep structures under, was it Khafre's pyramid?
Yes, Khafre.
So, just again, connect the dots between those structures underneath Khafre's pyramid. What do you think is hidden there, and why do modern Egyptologists seem to avoid discussing it?
Well, it's new for one thing, and it's not very well understood. And it's a natural for Egyptologists, particularly the main one, the most famous one, Jehovah's, to reject anything that is new pertaining that is based on science. He was resistant to the muon or the Scam Pyramid mission findings. He was resistant to the science there. He was resistant to carbon-14 dating. So anything related to science, his first initial reaction is to reject it. A lot of people similar, Egyptologists like him or archaeologists, that they have a similar reaction. When the information came out on the exploration or the SAR scan of Khafre's pyramid, I had been asked, I've received a lot of emails saying, "What do you think? Are you gonna announce anything?" And it's like a lot of people would. It was like a feeding frenzy in the press. People were going on Piers Morgan. There was all kinds of podcasts going up. I was invited on a lot of podcasts to talk about it, and I kind of put them off because it hadn't settled with me yet. I didn't know enough, right? And so I wasn't going to give an opinion based on, oh yeah, this supports my theory, so I am going to support it, because that's what they were saying. Hey, this essentially proves out what you were talking about. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I need to know a little more about it before I'm going to go public and say, yeah, it's good. Uh, so that took a while, and I was like, I need to. I am kind of skeptical about the CAD drawings that were extracted from the data, the scan data, the raw data, which was fairly uh, low resolution to me. It's not clear to me. Uh, but I decided that I would comment on it, and I said that I'm not qualified to say whether this is correct or incorrect. Um, but I'm, you know, it's interesting, but I think like everything else, we need to have physical exploration and be able to find them, and you actually measure the actual objects physically rather than in a CAD program in a computer. And nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying the real test is uh, it happens in the real world, not in the virtual world. Um, but then a very good friend of mine, Dr. Manu Seyfadeh, who is an author, he is a doctor, a very careful scientist, and he had been studying the SARS data, and he became a little more versed in how it functioned than I was, and so we talked a couple of times, and he began to convince me that there was something behind it. But then what he did is he started to query ChatGPT of the relationship between those columns under the pyramid and the model that I had published on the Giza Power Plant. And then after he had been working on it for a few weeks, he invited me into that space where he is inquiring of ChatGPT. He sent me a link, and I went and looked, and my jaw dropped. So I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" Because everything was lining up, uh, and it just gives me chills to even think about it. And after you see it, you can't unsee it. And then after understanding it and working with that AI a little bit myself to refine a lot of detail, I am like, I don't know how the Giza Power Plant would have worked without these things, right? Because essentially, if you're looking at the Freund's model, the Freund's physics, you have to stress the granite
Mhm.
to release those electrons. And if you are actually driving resonance or driving vibrations into the earth, and it has to pass through a few hundred meters of limestone before it starts hitting the granite, and then you're going to lose a lot of energy through that. But these the ancient Egyptians, they just drove right through the limestone sedimentary rock, right through, and then another 200 meters or so into the granite, uh, and then anchored their system there. Very elegant, very beautiful. It's like getting a plug and just plugging it into the wall, because here you have the battery, and all we have to do is just shake it up a little bit, and electricity will flow through these waveguides to the surface.
Assuming all the pyramids are designed for the same purpose, wouldn't then you expect to find similar chambers under all pyramids?
That's an interesting question too. I think the fundamental function of all the pyramids was basically energy based, or they were electron harvesters, and then other experiments or other designs are evident in some pyramids that are not in others. And I think the Great Pyramid was probably the pinnacle of all the development, the technological, scientific development of pyramids, and that's where they introduced the maser, and You don't find that in any of the other pyramids. So, but you do find other kinds of chambers with some of them have these granite boxes in them. They have more, like the third pyramid had more than one granite box. Um, and there's another researcher who is claiming that they were also producing chemicals. And it's like, yeah, it they were producing chemicals in the Great Pyramid too, and hydrogen in the Queen's Chamber. And in my first book, I described the chemicals that were introduced into that chamber that would mix and boil off hydrogen. Uh, and so then there is other pyramids like the Red Pyramid at Dashur. In the upper chamber, it smells strongly of ammonia. You almost have to run out of the place. It's so strong. Some people say, well, people have been going up there and relieving themselves. No, that's not your. It's not your. No, that'd be a hell of a long way to go to relieve yourself for sure. But anyway, that's a very interesting concept to be able to determine what other secondary functions or tertiary functions the pyramids have. And so I don't reject any ideas in terms of, what they possibly do, because I just focused on the Great Pyramid, and that's basically the model that I have in my books. But I have been criticized for not figuring out what all the others were doing. And I feel like as far as just the Great Pyramid, that was a lot of work. It took a few decades to refine it. And somebody else can pick on the other ones if they want, right?
True enough. This idea, though, of harvesting electrons is something we still struggle with today. Would it be a fair assumption then that the pyramid builders, I don't know if we can even call them ancient Egyptians, that's for someone else maybe to figure out, but the pyramid builders, let's call them, is it fair to say they would have had a working knowledge of quantum level physics?
I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that we could actually prove anything as far as interpreting hieroglyphs or reliefs, or they mean different things to different people. So somebody could see it who has a technical mind, a scientific mind, or they're used to actually working with symbols in science and engineering, and say, oh, well, that looks like an electrical schematic. So as far as quantum physics, I can't say, but I wouldn't put it past them. I won't put it past them.
So what happened to this technology? Was it destroyed in some cataclysmic event? Was it stolen? Was it suppressed? What do you think happened?
Well, I think the cataclysmic event is when everything fell apart, and then after that, of course, if you've got survivors, they're going to be looking for materials that they can use just to survive. And sometimes survival means fighting, going to war with a neighboring village. So, then you be turning plowshares into swords, right? Not the other way around.
Yeah. So what would happen if we were to unlock this pyramid code? If we were able to back engineer it, what would the world look like today if we had that capability?
Well, I think the vision is that you would have less pollution. There is another aspect of the technology, which is more in alignment with the natural frequencies of the earth, and they match with the frequencies of the human body. And so it's a kind of like a harmonic system. And so there has to be an effect on the culture, on the humans. Just as any new technology that we develop and put out into the world, that it changes the culture. And so sometimes in not a very positive way, but it does change the culture. So if you've got a means of developing power, or you have an electron harvester that sings like a violin, and it's harmonious, and it raises your spirits. Everybody who gathers around the Great Pyramid, or gathers at the Giza Plateau, they're affected in some way. I've witnessed it so many times. It changes you for sure. So yeah, I think it will be a totally different world, and I can't wait to see what the next generation and the next generation do with it, because I think they are seeing it now, but maybe in the West not so much, but the Egyptians are definitely excited about it. My books have been featured on Arabic television, Egyptian television. They're talked about there's a physicist at Cairo University that supports it. There are other professionals in Egypt who support it. So, uh, yeah, I think if we in the States, if we had like a Manhattan-like project where we say, okay, we're going to go all in on this, and we're going to develop it, and we're going to do it in 10 years. Just like, when Kennedy says we're going to go to the moon by the end of this decade, uh, that would be something to achieve. But it would require and it would require a very strong leader to direct it. Because you can't. I don't. There are some things you can't do by committee. Yes, you have to have a boss. So, but you have to have a lot of money too. And I think estimated construction would be maybe 10 years, maybe longer. I think just the preliminary examination of the viability of the technology using computer modeling, that would take a while. Doing acoustic modeling, computer modeling, then also mounting, a scientific expedition to do further scientific tests in and around the Great Pyramid. That will be necessary too. But I think, yeah, I think considering where we are now, and how we have, if we look at how much money we have spent on the development of nuclear fusion. I remember in the 70s they said it would be 30 years, but we would have our power would be delivered by nuclear fusion, very clean energy. But that is still a boil and a boil and blow process, right? So you boil water.
Yeah.
It's not. You still got these huge turbine halls, and you still have all that maintenance and all the ancillary tasks associated with them. Same delivery system. So I think just one test, a test pyramid electron harvester, and just prove out the science, prove out the technology, and before you go full bore on it.
Okay. So the final riddle of the pyramid isn't ancient at all. It's about our future, and maybe who controls it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Giza, the Tesla connection. Giza, the Tesla connection.
Yeah.
Christopher, how do we get a copy?
Well, all the online bookstores have them, including my publisher, innertraditions.com. Brick and mortar, if they don't have them on the shelf, you could order them. There's little boutique bookshops will carry it. And you can go to the library if you want to buy, if you don't want to buy a copy. So yeah, they're available. They're out there, and I just heard that it's going to be published in Arabic, and it should be available in Arabic at the end of January. And then, interestingly, in March, I will be going on tour with the scientists on the SAR scanning team, and I'm looking forward to that immensely. It should be a very enlightening journey for anybody who wants to sign up. That's been run by Mohammed Ibrahim's company, Sabatours, SABA tours.com. The notice and the itinerary has not been posted yet, but my website is gizapower.com. I plan to put a page up there about the tour as soon as I have the details on it.
Absolutely, absolutely mind-blowing. Can't wait to talk again after your next expedition. Christopher, thank you so much for this.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Richard.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.